A dust storm crawled like a ghost across the prairie, low and hungry, licking at the cracked earth and choking the sky in red haze. The sun burned dim through the grit, barely a gold smear behind the curtain of sand. Through the murk, a slender silhouette darted, skirts tattered, braid whipping in the wind. A girl no older than 13, feet bare and bleeding, ran with fierce purpose. She chased something wild and black, a mustang free and unbroken, tail streaming like smoke. The animal paused at the ridge, nostrils flaring. It watched the girl. She extended a hand. "Come on," she whispered, voice nearly lost in the howl. The mustang turned and vanished over the bluff, and Clara stood still, dust caked to her skin, eyes glassy but not crying. She never cried anymore. Voiceover, soft, weathered. "They say the prairie raises two kinds of folks, those who break and those who break others." Clara hadn't seen a birthday cake since her mother's funeral. At 8, she'd been orphaned in all but name. Her mother died birthing a stillborn son, and her father, Silas McAllister, once a proud rancher, never returned from that grave. He still lived, yes, but only in form. He drank, he sulked, he obeyed the woman he foolishly remarried. Irene, tall, bony, venomous. Irene had come from the East, widow of a bankrupt preacher, with sharp words and sharper eyes. She'd taken over the ranch like a queen with a rusty crown, barking orders, hiding money, and shaming Clara at every turn. Clara now slept in the barn loft, curled beside the hay like a stray cat. Her dresses were patched flour sacks, her meals whatever Irene didn't want. But she had one thing, one living soul who remembered love. Ash, a once glorious black stallion, now aged and scarred. He had belonged to her mother, who had whispered poems into his ears and rode bareback at twilight. Ash had not let another rider near him since. But Clara he watched. She'd curl beside him in the dark, whispering dreams into his mane. "Someday I'll ride you," she said, "and we'll just go west until there's nothing left but sky." And Ash would lower his head, as if he understood every word. Morning came like a hammer. Clara rose before the rooster crowed and shoveled manure in silence, her arms bruised from the day before. She was always bruised. Irene claimed it was because Clara was clumsy, but everyone knew better. The ranch hands had stopped asking questions long ago. "Faster!" Irene snapped from the porch, her voice cracking across the yard like a whip. Clara's only reply was to keep her head down. Later, in the kitchen, Irene thrust a wet dish rag at her. "Scrub the root cellar walls. They stink like you." Clara nodded. Her fingers burned from last night's lashings. Silas sat at the table, drunk before noon. He didn't look up. He hadn't looked up in years. Only Ash saw her. Only Ash cared. That evening, while Clara brushed burrs from Ash's tail, Irene appeared behind her with a rusted pail. "Stop wasting time on that glue bag. He's no good for riding, too old for breeding. Might as well sell him for leather." Clara stiffened. "He's mine." A slap landed so fast it knocked her to the straw. Irene stood over her, mouth twisted. "Nothing here is yours, not even your name." Ash snorted, stomped, eyes burning with rage. Irene froze, backing off. But later at dinner, Irene told Silas she'd struck a deal with a trader heading south. Ash was to be sold tomorrow. Silas grunted. That was it. Clara didn't eat that night. She returned to the barn and buried her face into Ash's neck. "He won't take you," she whispered. "I won't let him." Ash nuzzled her shoulder. Her cheeks were dry. She didn't cry anymore. That night, the wind stirred strange. Thunder rumbled deep, far off. Lightning flashed in veins across the horizon, and the air tasted of iron. Clara waited until the house fell dark. Then, with heart pounding and breath held, she slipped out barefoot across the field, carrying only a rope, a tin of oats, and her mother's old shawl. Ash waited, quiet, tense. "You ready?" she asked, tying the lead. The stallion looked into her, as if weighing her soul. He lowered his head. Clara opened the back gate, leading him through the mesquite brush and toward the dried-up creek bed. The storm was coming fast, wind tearing at her skirt. She knew the traders' route. If they could get past the river crossing before dawn, they might find help in Dry Hollow. Ash trotted beside her, hooves muffled on sand. For the first time in years, she felt hope blooming, raw, wild. Then came the voice. "Clara!" A lantern flared behind them. Irene's scream cut through the night like broken glass. Clara yanked the rope, urging Ash into a gallop. But Irene was faster, horseback, rifle drawn. A shot rang out. Dirt burst beside Clara's foot. Ash reared, trying to shield her, but Clara slipped, crashing to the ground. Irene was there in seconds, dismounting and grabbing her by the braid. "You ungrateful little wretch." The whip cracked, splitting across Clara's cheek. Ash charged, but Irene had brought chains, heavy iron ones. The woman swung them fast, locking Ash to a thick post buried in concrete. Clara reached for him, screaming, tears finally breaking free. But it was over. Irene dragged Clara back to the house, her cheek bleeding, voice hoarse. Ash didn't stop staring, eyes wide, ears back. Clara's voice trembled as she whispered back through the darkness. "I tried. I really did." And in the shadows of the barn, the storm broke at last. Rain poured like judgment, and the horse waited. The storm didn't just arrive, it devoured the land. Winds howled like wolves let loose from hell. Rain fell in slanting sheets, and the barn groaned under the weight of it. Lightning ripped the sky to pieces, turning the prairie into a world of flashing bones and black silence. Clara sat in the hayloft, pressing a cloth to her torn cheek when she heard it. A thud, heavy, wet. She leaned over the loft's edge and saw a body collapsed just inside the barn doors. Thunder cracked again, and she scrambled down the ladder, heart pounding. He was half conscious, barefoot, bleeding from a gash along his ribs, soaked to the marrow. His face was lean and sun-worn, a tangled braid falling across one shoulder. He wore a torn hide jacket and a necklace of crow feathers, and he had a bullet hole in his side. Without thinking, Clara dragged him across the straw and buried him beneath hay and saddle blankets just as the back door slammed open. "Clara!" Irene's voice cut sharp. "You in there?" Clara coughed. "Feeding Ash." The woman huffed and turned back inside. When she was gone, Clara uncovered the man. His eyes fluttered open, dark and unfocused. "Shh," she whispered. "You're safe." He blinked, then glanced toward the stall. Ash was watching, ears forward. Still, the man rasped, voice dry as gravel. "That one seen war." Clara hesitated. "So have I." She helped him drink from a canteen, then stitched the wound as best she could, trembling the whole time. He didn't scream, just breathed. Later, he whispered his name, Calder. "Half Comanche," he said. "Bounty hunters tracked me north. Didn't like how free I was." Clara didn't ask more. She just nodded. In this part of the world, you didn't need to explain being hunted. Alder didn't leave. Couldn't really. For days, Clara fed him bread scraps and creek water, changed his bandages, and whispered stories she used to tell her mother. He barely spoke, but listened. Always listened. Ash came to stand beside Calder's bed of hay each morning. Never hostile, just there. One morning, Calder sat up, slowly, gritting his teeth. "I can fix that stable door," he said, nodding to the one that hung crooked on its hinges. Clara raised an eyebrow. "You've got one good arm." He shrugged. That's all I need." It took them 3 days, but together they patched the splintered planks, oiled the hinges, and secured the latch. Calder showed her how to tie a square knot and how to hammer with rhythm, not rage. At night, he taught her more. "How do you tell when coyotes are near?" she asked once. He smiled, just barely, and pressed her palm to the dirt. "When even the wind holds its breath." He showed her how to use a small skinning knife, how to feel the direction of a trail, and where to look for water in dry land. Each lesson carved strength into her bones. But one night, Clara broke. She was braiding hay into rope when she said quietly, "I want to run, but I can't leave him. Ash." Calder stared at the stallion, whose coat still shimmered like oil in moonlight. "He's old," she added, "but he'd never let me go alone." Calder nodded slowly. "A horse like that only gives his heart once. He'd find you even in hell." She didn't know if that was a promise or a warning, but either way it meant he believed her. And no one had believed Clara in a very long time. The rain stopped after 6 days. The prairie steamed beneath the sun, and birds returned to the fence posts, chirping like nothing had changed. But everything had. Clara was brushing Ash when she overheard voices through the kitchen window. "Irene, and a man's. That old black stallion," he said. "I've got a buyer in Cold Ridge. Tannery. You'll have your coin by tomorrow," Irene replied. "And the girl's no use either. I've arranged for her to be sent to the coppersmith's workhouse. They'll break her good." Clara froze. The brush dropped from her hand. She ran back to the barn, heart-hammering. Calder was already packing his few belongings: scraps of jerky, a hatchet, the skinning knife. "You heard?" he asked. She nodded. He handed her a small pouch. "Flint, rope, knife." "I can't." "You can. You must. Ride west. River settlements, 3 days out. Ride at dawn." Clara looked at Ash. "Will he make it?" Calder knelt beside the stallion, looked him in the eye. "He'll die for you." Clara barely slept that night. She crept toward the barn before sunrise, but Irene was waiting, knife in hand, eyes full of fire. "You think I didn't know? You think I'm blind?" Calder stepped from behind a beam, limping but upright. Irene shrieked, "You're dead. You were supposed to be dead." She lunged at Clara, blade raised. Ash screamed. With the rage of a beast unleashed, the stallion lunged forward, snapping the lead post like it was twine. His jaws clamped onto Irene's arm, crunching bone, and hurled her backward into the fence rail, where she collapsed in a heap. She groaned, not dead, but broken. Calder stood above her, knife drawn, breathing like a storm himself. Clara rushed forward. "No." He blinked. "She'd kill you. Let the land deal with her." Ash stood behind her, blood flecking his muzzle, steam rising from his flanks like a war horse. They didn't speak again. They didn't need to. The prairie burned gold beneath the dawn, but for Clara, it was ablaze with fear. She gripped the reins tight, knees pressed into Ash's flanks as they thundered through the fields, wind screaming past her ears. Behind them, Irene's voice rose like a banshee, furious and cracking from pain. Gunshots followed. Clara ducked as one zipped past her, sparking off a rock. Ash didn't flinch. Up at the barn, a fire bloomed. Flames licked the roof and sent smoke pouring into the sky. Calder, limping and fierce, had lit the hayloft himself, tossing a lantern into the dry straw. 2 of Irene's hired men stood in confusion, shouting. He met them head-on, blade flashing in the chaos. "Keep going," he'd told Clara moments before. "Don't stop for anything." Now Clara and Ash cut across a winding arroyo, the clay walls narrowing like a canyon. Brush scraped her legs, and Ash stumbled once but caught his stride. Clara whispered to him through clenched teeth, "We're almost free." But the world had one more test. In the forest edge ahead, dark and dripping from recent rains, wolves waited. 4 of them, lean and gray, eyes glowing like fireflies. Ash snorted, teeth bared. Clara's breath caught. No. Ash, run. They didn't. They circled. Then one lunged. Ash reared, hooves striking air and flesh. Clara clung to his mane, screaming. Another wolf leapt and bit deep into Ash's neck, tearing flesh. But the stallion kept fighting. His hooves found bone. He sent one predator limping away, another sprawling. The third backed off. Ash was bleeding, breathing hard, but still standing. Clara's tears came in streams now, not from fear, but from awe. He was more than a horse. He was a warrior. The river finally appeared, winding through the last stretch of prairie, wide and muddy from the rains. Ash stumbled toward it, each step labored, blood trailing behind him like a thread unraveling fate. Clara slid off his back and led him by the reins into the shallows. His legs shook. Just a little farther, she whispered. Please. Ash didn't move. He stared ahead, across the water, where a wooden farmhouse stood, smoke rising from its chimney. A dog barked in the distance. Someone moved at the porch. Clara tugged again. Ash. And then he stepped forward. 1, 2, 3 strides into the water. Then more. Halfway across, his knees buckled. No, no, don't you stop, Clara begged, wrapping her arms around his neck. You got me this far. Just one more. He whinnied and rose. One final time. He dragged himself the last stretch, hooves squelching in the muddy bank, and collapsed in the grass on the other side. Clara fell beside him, sobbing, holding his face in her hands. A door creaked open. Footsteps approached. Boots. A woman's voice. Good Lord. 2 settlers, a man and wife, stood above her, stunned. Clara looked up. Please help him. They nodded, moved fast. But it was too late. Ash exhaled once, deep and soft, and then he stilled. Clara pressed her forehead to his and whispered, You made it. We made it. And somewhere behind her, a dawn she'd never dared to dream finally broke. Weeks passed. The settlers, Mr. and Mrs. Keene, took Clara in. They didn't ask too many questions. They just offered warm bread, clean clothes, and a room where the sunlight didn't feel like a stranger. Clara began helping with the crops, feeding the chickens, and attending lessons with the Keenes' 3 children. At first, she barely spoke. Then one day, she read aloud an old poem in a dusty book. Her voice trembled, then grew stronger. The barn smelled of cedar and hay, and for the first time, she felt safe. One afternoon, Calder appeared at the fence line. He didn't come close, just raised a hand in greeting. He left something with the youngest Keene boy, a small wooden carving of a black stallion, fierce and noble, its mane carved wild like fire. Tucked beneath it was a note, written in blocky letters. He was wild, but he chose you. Clara planted wildflowers by the riverbank, where Ash had fallen. Each night, she sat there, whispering her old stories into the wind. Stories of her mother, of Calder, of fire, wolves, storms, of a horse who fought the world to save her. And every word made her voice stronger. So did she. Some friendships can't be spoken. Some heroes never wear boots. And some angels ride on 4 legs. The sun set across the riverbank. Clara stood beneath the tree where she planted the flowers, her hands wrapped around Ash's old bridle, worn but clean. She didn't cry. She just looked to the horizon, strong, steady, and alive. Fade to black. Clapperboard call to action. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more unforgettable Wild West tales. Tell us, what would you have done for a friend like Ash?